The wind tasted like ash. Lyra Vance staggered across the cracked surface of the old Earth defense perimeter, her boots crunching over broken ceramic plating. She didn't know why her legs moved, or why her fingers curled instinctively around a rusted comlink she couldn't even name. Her mind was a fogged-out battlefield. Images flickered at the edge of recognition only to vanish when she reached for them. No name, no past. Just the crushing sensation that something terrible had happened, that something had been taken from her. She collapsed near a jagged metallic husk, once a recon drone. Its long dead eyes stared at her like a blind sentinel. She closed her own eyes, forcing herself to breathe through the metallic taste in her throat. Then came the flashes again, flames licking the sides of a dome, a scream drowned out by static, a cold, reptilian face with translucent eyelids. Her head throbbed violently. A memory or a dream. Either way, it stabbed like a blade. She hadn't noticed the drone awaken. A faint green light blinked in the husk's core. A voice, artificial but warm, pulsed through the silence. Vitals unstable. Neural pattern fragmented. Subject human. Designation unknown. Initiating low-band interface. She flinched, her hand crawling toward the comlink out of instinct, aiming it at the drone's eye. "Who are you?" she rasped, surprised at her own voice, hoarse and hollow, as if unused for weeks. "I am Dax-7. Tactical AI. Long-range reconnaissance. Subroutines degraded. You appear compromised." "No shit," she murmured. Her vision doubled. A wave of dizziness overtook her, and she vomited into the dust. Dax waited, silent, until she could sit back against the charred hull of a transport tank. "You were carrying neural tags," the drone said. "Encrypted. High tier. Memory partitions forcibly severed. Virex signature detected." That word ignited something. Not understanding, but rage. She didn't know why, but her knuckles tightened against the cold grip of the comlink. "Virex," she whispered, letting the name burn her throat. The image surged back. A face, almost human, but wrong. Serpentine eyes, fingers that stretched too long, voice like static sewn into silk. "They did this to me." It wasn't a question. It was certainty. Affirmative. Virex specialize in cognitive suppression. "You are targeted." "Why?" Dax buzzed softly. "Unknown. But traces in your cerebral lattice suggest military-grade memory vaulting. Your mind was shielding something. Then they tried to wipe it." She stared at her own hands. They bore old burn scars, surgical marks, inked coordinates on her wrist she didn't remember drawing. The body remembered what the mind could not. Somewhere inside her, beneath the silence, something still lived. She wasn't just a victim. She had purpose. She had been someone important. "I need answers," she said. "Then we must go where the encryption began. There's an abandoned relay outpost 40 kilometers north. Signal range still faintly active. Possibly where your cognitive backups originated." She blinked at him. "Backups? I'm not a machine." "You are enhanced," Dax replied. "And desperate." She nodded. There was no room for protest. Her ribs ached, and the muscles in her legs trembled as she stood. But the thought of standing still, of doing nothing, was worse. She could feel her identity clawing up from the darkness, shards of herself trying to reassemble. Whatever the Virex had buried, she would exhume it, with fire if needed. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, a graveyard of old battles and forgotten defenses. She began to walk, her steps uneven but gaining strength. Dax hovered behind her, its engine sputtering like a tired bird. Hours passed. Dax filled the silence with fragmented observations, battlefield analysis, terrain risks, bio-readings. Lyra ignored most of it, lost in her own excavations. Faces flickered behind her eyes, a child's laughter, a man with calloused hands touching her cheek, and then, abruptly, an operating table, restraints biting into her wrists, alien tools descending. She screamed without sound. "Memory flare," Dax said gently. "Your brain is reconnecting neural nodes. Recovery is unpredictable, but the pain indicates survival. She fell to her knees. This time, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of recollection. The child was her daughter. The man, her husband. They were dead, burned alive in the first purge. She didn't remember the details, only their faces, and the hollow inside her heart that had been there even before she knew to call it grief. She didn't cry. The tears felt too far removed. But when she stood again, her gait had changed. It was the walk of someone with scars beneath the skin. Someone who died once and wasn't afraid of doing it again. "Why would they wipe me?" she asked aloud. "If they killed my family, what did I know that scared them?" Dax clicked. That is the right question. As they reached the broken threshold of a blackened calm tower, Lyra stopped and scanned the sky. It was empty, pale orange against gray. But for a moment, she felt watched. Not by a drone. Not by a Virex. By herself, by the person she used to be. "Dax," she said quietly, "what happens if I find out the truth and I can't live with it?" "Then I will remind you," the drone answered, "that they tried to erase you, not because you were weak, but because you were dangerous." The tower loomed ahead, its signal whispering across the void like a ghost calling her name. Lyra squared her shoulders, stepped forward, and didn't look back. The tower's entrance hissed open with reluctant hydraulics, releasing a stale breath of air that reeked of ozone and mold. Lyra stepped into the darkness, the drone light from Dax gliding over dust-slicked consoles and cracked wall panels. Symbols, half English, half machine code, flickered on the walls as power sluggishly returned to the terminal grid. She moved instinctively, as if some part of her already knew the layout, her fingertips brushing consoles like they were old instruments in a half-forgotten symphony. "This is Station Theta," Dax confirmed, hovering beside her shoulder. "You installed a neural anchor here. The tech is proprietary, human origin, but far beyond civilian access. Military or classified scientific tier." Lyra stared at the core processor. Beneath its scorched glass was a sphere, a pale, pulsating node encased in obsidian crystal. It responded to her presence like a heartbeat syncing with her own. "How do I access it?" she asked. Dax extended a thin appendage and tapped the interface. "You don't. It accesses you." Pain shot through her spine. She collapsed to her knees as invisible currents swarmed her nervous system. The air crackled. Memories surged like floodwater breaching a dam. Her hands clawed at the floor as her mind fractured, shattered pieces reconnecting with the violence of rebirth. The lab. That was where it started. She saw herself in a room of obsidian walls and humming conduits, surrounded by equations etched in plasma light. She had built the Neurovault herself, crafted from stolen Virex psionic tech. It was supposed to shield sensitive knowledge, blueprints, protocols, names of resistance leaders, until Earth had a chance to fight back. She hadn't just been a scientist. She was the failsafe. And then they came. The Virex didn't invade like conquerors. They infiltrated like parasites, whispering into thoughts, erasing identities one by one. They found her not through force, but through betrayal, someone close, someone trusted. She saw the moment her daughter's hollow frame fell from her desk, glass shattering, just as the Virex broke in. Their voices filled her mind again. Gentle, methodical, merciless. "You remember too much," one had said, lowering a biotether into her brainstem. "Let's fix that," she screamed. Not now, but in the memory. And then, mercifully, silence. When her eyes opened again, she was back on the tower floor, shivering. Dax hovered overhead, static crackling around its frame. "Vitals unstable," it reported, but memory integration complete. She stood slowly, brushing blood from her nose. "I remember." Dax pulsed. "Then you understand what they took from you." Lyra turned toward the core and activated a secondary screen. Her name lit up. Dr. Lyra Vance. Neural Architect. Codename, Scythe. "I wasn't just building resistance plans," she said. "I was developing a cognitive virus. Something to target Virex collective memory. A counterweapon." "Correct," Dax confirmed. A forgetting agent, delivered psionically. If uploaded to the Virex Nexus, it would erase the genetic memory they use to maintain identity. Lyra stared at her own design with new eyes. The code wasn't just elegant, it was lethal. The Virex didn't reproduce through bodies alone. Their power stemmed from memory inheritance. Kill their memory and their civilization collapsed. But the virus was incomplete, she said, scrolling through the final fragments. I needed a seed memory. Something strong enough to pierce their collective, something emotional. You used your daughter's neural imprint, Dax said quietly. You encoded her final words, her last thoughts. Lyra's breath caught. Her hands hovered over the interface. She said, "They can't take everything, right?" She whispered, reading the stored echo. Even as they took her body, her voice resisted. She leaned against the console, eyes burning. That's why they had to erase me. I was the vector, the last carrier of the virus. If I died, it died with me. Dax nodded. But you lived. And now, she said, straightening. So, does the virus. She transferred the recovered files into Dax's memory banks, watching the process complete. We finish the work. We find the Virex Nexus and end them. There is risk, Dax warned. The upload will expose you to psionic recoil. You may lose your own memories again. Or worse. I know. Her voice didn't tremble. What about justice? The drone asked. What about mercy? She met its unblinking eye. Mercy is what allowed them to get this far. They didn't just kill my family. They erased Earth's defiance. If memory is their weapon, then mine will be sharper. She turned toward the exit, the sky outside burning pink with the last light of day. Her limbs still trembled, but there was resolve in her spine now. A purpose restored. They wanted me to forget, she said, more to herself than to Dax. But I remember everything now, and I will make sure they never forget what comes next. With the virus complete and vengeance crystallizing into strategy, she descended from the tower. A storm brewed on the horizon, lightning dancing through the clouds like neural sparks. The world awaited. The Virex awaited. And Lyra Vance's scythe was ready to teach a species what it meant to be forgotten. The sky above the Virex Nexus pulsed with unnatural light, bands of violet energy coiling around the monolithic spire that pierced the stratosphere. It shimmered like a mirage, suspended in the wastelands of what used to be Central Asia. No walls, no guards, just raw psychic force radiating in waves. For the Virex, secrecy had never been a priority. Why hide a fortress no one remembered existed? Lyra crouched in the wreckage of a downed satellite, eyes fixed on the horizon. Her skin prickled from the psionic interference. The closer she got, the more the air trembled with thought. Not noise, not sound, but the constant murmuring of billions of alien minds sharing memory. It was beautiful in the most horrifying sense, like watching a swarm of glowing insects devour a dying animal. They're connected, she whispered. Every one of them. Continuously, Dax replied, its outer shell crackling from proximity exposure. They operate as a single cognitive organism. If you succeed, they die together. She looked down at the injector, her modified neurovirus encased in a vial the size of her thumb. One drop in the Nexus core, and their ancestral memory would unravel from within. History, culture, identity, all consumed by a memory echo seeded with the grief of a dying child. A weapon as intimate as it was absolute. They had tried to take that grief from her. Now it would be the instrument of their extinction. Dax extended a thin projection from its chassis, pointing toward a breach in the terrain, an old mine shaft that led beneath the Nexus. Path exists. Minimal defense structures. They do not expect infiltration. Not from a forgotten. She didn't answer. Her mind was already preparing for the plunge. Not just into the structure, but into memory itself. Once inside the Nexus, she'd have to connect, open herself to their network to release the virus. That meant letting them into her mind one last time. She slipped into the passage silently, the walls humming with residual energy. The deeper she moved, the more her thoughts frayed at the edges. Whispers brushed against her psyche, fragments of alien memory testing her defenses. She grit her teeth and kept moving. Her hand tightened on the injector. At the chamber's heart stood the Nexus core, a vast crystalline sphere suspended above a lattice of neural conduits, pulsing with liquid light. And beneath it, waiting like a priest at an altar, stood the Mindkeeper. It looked almost human, tall, robed, eyes black as void space, but its voice echoed not from its mouth, but directly into her skull. "Scythe," it intoned, as though welcoming a guest long expected. "We feared you might remember." She stepped forward, the injector trembling in her hand. "And yet you let me in." "We wanted to see," the Mindkeeper replied, tilting its head. "What kind of creature returns to the fire that burned it?" Lyra stared into the core. It throbbed in time with her pulse. Not a creature, a mother. The Mindkeeper flinched. Alien as it was, the concept struck something ancient and primal. She took another step forward. "You came to my world and erased names, histories, faces. You made us forget our pain, so we couldn't act on it. But memory is more than a burden. It's resistance. And you failed to take mine. We preserved you," the voice said, more defensively now. "You were brilliant. Dangerous. We chose mercy. You chose control." The injector's needle slid open, glinting in the soft light. Lyra moved toward the console beneath the core. The Mindkeeper's form shimmered, losing its human mimicry. Spines of translucent bone extended from its back. Its voice was no longer calm. "If you infect the core, you destroy not just soldiers, but worlds. Children. Seeds of futures unbirthed." "I buried a child too," Lyra said. "And she never had the chance to be anything but a ghost." The Mindkeeper lunged. A psionic shockwave knocked Lyra backward, slamming her into a pillar. Blood sprayed from her lip, and memories exploded behind her eyes, foreign, invasive. She saw Virex wars, their evolution, their endless need to consume and overwrite. Their logic was simple. No resistance in those who forget. But she pushed back. She opened her mind to everything they feared: grief, rage, memory sharpened into vengeance. She projected her daughter's final thought into the Mindkeeper's mind like a blade. "They can't take everything, right?" the alien screamed. Lyra rolled forward, jamming the injector into the console. The virus surged into the neural lattice, weaving through threads of shared memory like a flame tracing old parchment. The sphere above cracked, veins of darkness spiderwebbing across its surface. The network howled. She staggered to her feet as Dax descended through the ceiling breach, its systems overheating. "Upload complete. Core destabilizing. You must evacuate." "No," she said through clenched teeth. "I'm not done." She reached toward the core and laid her palm against it. In that moment, she felt the entire species shudder. She watched their ancestors crumble, their histories fragment, their cities become myths even to themselves. And then emptiness. The connection severed. The Virex were no longer one mind. No longer anything. She collapsed. Dax carried her limp body from the burning chamber as the core imploded behind them, sending a wave of psychic silence across the sky. They emerged into a world changed. The hum in the air was gone. The voices had stopped. Above them, the spire flickered and died. Lyra stirred in Dax's grasp, eyes fluttering open. "Did it work?" she murmured. Dax hovered for a long moment before answering. "Yes. The Virex are gone." She closed her eyes again, not in sleep, but in relief. She had remembered enough to destroy an empire. But deep inside, she wondered what price her own memory had paid, and whether she would ever truly be herself again.